third video in our series, Stamp Titles for Scrapbook Pages with Banana Frog Stamps. I'm Shamel, and today we're going to create a resist effect with stamps and embossing, then cut out our title from a stamped paper. You won't even need a set of letter stamps, so let's get started. Today I'm starting off with off-white cardstock and a swirl stamp from Banana Frog's It's All About Flourishes set. For this technique, we need a clear embossing ink like Versamark. You're just going to ink up the stamp and stamp the design randomly around the paper. The placement doesn't really matter because we're going to cut the letters from this piece of paper, so it doesn't need to look amazing as one sheet of paper. I would suggest that you don't have the stamps overlap too much at this point, if at all, because you're going to want some empty space on the paper as well. Go ahead and stamp about half a sheet of cardstock, and then that'll be enough for a nice big title. Clear embossing ink is only going to leave a really subtle mark on the cardstock, like a watermark, so you're not going to see it very much on the screen right here, I'm afraid, but it's there, I promise. When you're finished stamping, be sure to clean the Versamark off your stamps, and then we'll get started with embossing. If you've never heat embossed before, I would really suggest going back and watching video 2 in this series, because in that video we go through the steps in quite a bit more detail. For this project, I'm using clear embossing powder, so the off-white of the cardstock is going to show up in the final title. You can also use a colored powder if you prefer. You just want to cover all the stamp designs with powder, then shake off the excess and pour it back into the jar or whatever container you keep your powder in. We're going to use a heat tool to emboss these designs. With clear powder and clear ink, it's just going to go to a really shiny finish on the paper. It's still not going to be super obvious because there's no color to it, but that's okay. We're going to add some color in just a minute. I'm just going to show you this really quickly. Obviously, it'll take a few more seconds than this in real life. Once all the powder is melted, then we're going to move on to the resist technique. Now, for the resist, I'm using 2 shades of distress ink in the same color. I'm using peeled paint and shabby shutters, but the trick is just to have a light and a dark in the same color, no matter which ones you want to pick. Just pick whatever's going to match your layout. I use the same applicator for both shades, and I just put the light ink at one end and the dark at the other. Ink up the lighter color and start scrubbing over part of each stamp design on your cardstock. Just scrub in a circular motion to get some color on the page, and then the embossed design will resist the ink, and for the first time you'll see the swirls come through very clear. I'm using textured cardstock. That takes a bit more ink and a bit more effort, but I like the texture in the finished design. You can use a flat cardstock or even a shiny cardstock to make things a bit more even if you like, and it'll make it a lot easier to add the ink. And once you're finished with the light color, then ink the dark side of the foam, and then go around and just do the other side of the stamp design. So you can see each swirl has some light ink and some dark ink. You want to do that to each of the stamp designs, and then just take the ink and go in and fill in the empty gaps so that you've got some color all over the page in between the stamps. It doesn't need to be really, really even or anything. You just want to make sure that it's all the color rather than the off-white or the white cardstock background. To add a little bit more depth to the color layering, I'm going to add a mask and then use Tattered Angel's Glimmer Mist to spray over the design. The mask is an older one by Heidi Swapp, and I used Spanish Moss for the Glimmer Mist color. It's a really dark green with a bit of a pewter shimmer. Now, if you properly shake up a bottle of Glimmer Mist, you're going to get these really big droplets, and that's actually what I wanted, so I went ahead and shook the bottle. If you don't like big splotchy droplets, make sure you roll the bottle instead of shaking it, and then spray a little bit off the page before you start spraying on your project, and then you'll be able to get a nice even mist. But I actually wanted nice big things that look like paint splatters rather than just the fine mist. I'm really not worried too much about the mask. I just wanted it to be able to add the depth to the texture here, so I could have a bit of variety in all those greens that are on the page. You can either just leave this to dry, or you can speed it up by using the heat tool like we did before. It won't matter if you're going back over that heat embossed area, the embossing powder will be fine. Now, I'm going to go really, really retro with this and use a lettering template to trace my letters. You can cut letters all sorts of ways, like a die cutting machine, either one that you plug in or one that you use without any electricity. But a template like this, you can put it over the paper and see exactly where every letter is going to cut. So I can line up the letters so that I have just a little bit of the stamp swirl and a bit that's not stamped, and I can get it in just the right place. And I just use a pencil and trace over the letter. And I'm going to trace each letter of my title just the same way. This template is ages old. I mean, it must be close to 10 years old. The company that made it isn't even in business anymore. But I've kept all my lettering templates in a notebook with all my just regular stencils and things. And every once in a while, it's just what you need for a layout. So I'm kicking it old school, I suppose. Um, but yeah. So I'm going to trace each letter here and then cut them out. Now, you can cut these out with scissors or a craft knife. I'm completely incompetent with a craft knife, so I just use scissors because scissors I can handle. Basically, you're just going to go around the straight lines first and then go back in to get the finer details of each letter. Just be patient with it. I find the paper cutting is actually still quite soothing. I used to cut letters all the time when I first started scrapbooking, so it's just kind of the thing that got me into scrapbooking. So I like letters and cutting out fonts. So if you don't, use a die cutting machine, use whatever you want, that'll be a lot quicker. Then when you've got all the letters cut out, I like to go back and just add that same ink in the darker color around the edges, just to give it that bit of finish. And it's also going to make it a lot easier to read when it's on the page because I'm going to put these over pattern papers. So I still want them to be able to be legible even though there's not a thick border to them or anything. So I'm just adding a little bit of ink to the edge. Now I added the title letters to my scrapbook page with pop dots, and then I finished the title with some American Craft stickers and some letter stickers from Studio Calico, just to give a bit of a mix to the whole title. The yellow pattern paper in the middle of the page is an older one by American Crafts, and it has just a bit of a swirl design, which is why I wanted to use a swirl stamp from Banana Frog in those letters to bring the design together. That's pretty much everything for today's tutorial. We'll be back with more stamping and scrapping videos soon, so please subscribe on YouTube if you're enjoying the series. And be sure to let us know on the blog. If there's something you want to see us show step by step with Banana Frog stamps, let us know and we'll include it in the series. Thanks so much for watching!